Remote workers have no attachment, no passion, no creativity. And when you now think, wait a minute, that's not how things work. Well, I agree with that. However, that was what L'Oreal CEO Nicolas Hieronymus said. And when you think, well, maybe that was just locker room talk. So first, don't go down the route of locker room talk. Certain politicians did that, and it didn't go too well, and it didn't end very well. When you say something as a CEO of an international corporation, you have to expect that this probably goes viral, and this ended up on Yahoo Finance, other major platforms. So it's now part of public discussions. And the question is, how do I deal with CEOs making brash statements that are, let's say, led by more opinion than the actual scientific discussion we have? So how do you deal with C-level making opinion statements when probably the factual situation says something different? However, when we look into the statement here, no attachment, no passion, no creativity, we have to look at it first. Is this actually correct or is it incorrect? And let's go through this, because the controversy about what Hieronymus said here is going on right now, and people think, how does reality look like? So aspect number one is he says people have no attachment. So first, when there is no proper concept about remote work, it is correct that people have very little or less attachment to their organization than they had before. Because just saying, oh, yeah, let's go remote, and then people just work from home with a bit of online Teams, Zoom thing, that's, of course, not enough. However, we now have to see, is there a solution that works? And we see organizations thriving with remote work. So let's look into different aspects here. Do you have flex time? So, for example, people can work different times. You probably had that even before the pandemic, and you had to organize this. Of course you did. Do you have flex office? Can people, for example, work in different rooms, or don't you have any kind of flex? Don't you have any kind of fixed workspace? You always have to book into different seats, different rooms. Do you have flex workspace so people can do this in different locations even, so you don't even know where they are across the city or across the country? Flex time, flex office, flex workspace, all of that needed organization. So how can you approach work from home and thinking this does not need a proper concept? Work from home means that you have to organize countless aspects of projects, people working together in different locations, different moments, different rooms, or probably work from home for 100% of their time. So you don't see them in the office at all. And when you have concepts like work from anywhere, where people can work all over the country or even outside the country, then of course you might think, how do I deal with this? Of course, you can say it makes the job a lot more attractive. However, work from anywhere needs a proper concept of how to get things done. Saying that there is no attachment is wrong. However, there can be less attachment. So it is partly wrong, partly right. So there can be less attachment when there is no proper concept. And you might now rightfully claim, well, who can sign off these concepts and who should deal with these concepts? Well, the CEO, of course, is part of that game. So maybe L'Oreal, especially Mr. Hieronymus, needs a bit more self-reflection of what they have done in the past, because other companies work very well with remote work. And when your company does not, then there's probably a reason. And high-level leaders are part of the team who needs to provide the solution, or at least the ideas that lead to these solutions. Looking at the second aspect, there is no passion. And that is something where we have to look into science as well. The XY theory of Douglas McGregor, how do you see people? And the XY theory comes from, let's look at a person. X means they have their arms crossed in front of their body. Y means they have their arms wide open. And that's exactly the picture he wants to convey. Do you think that people block off work and they are not motivated, so you have to force them to work? Or do you think that people are actually motivated, like to go to work, like to see meaning in work? And when they don't see that, probably leaders have done something wrong. And that's a very important part of how you see today's working world. I see way too many people being way too negative. Looking into science, we can say, and of course, we shouldn't generalize too much, in very low paid, very hard labor jobs, they probably are not motivated beyond just saying I have to put food on the table and pay my rent. But in general, the vast majority of people like to go to work and like to do something meaningful. However, of course, that means you need to apply reciprocity. Reciprocity means if you take care of your people, they take care of you. So which benefits do you actually offer for your employees? Because when you, for example, provide bad leadership, you get a bad response for that. And of course, then people most likely will prefer to work from home rather than going to the office, seeing the leaders they don't even like to work with. You cannot just enforce people to be passionate. And also, if someone says there is no passion and connecting that to showing up in an office, let's just say you go to an interview and you say, oh, I'm a passionate worker. And then someone asks, how do you define passion? And you say, well, I show up in the office every morning. Then people would probably say that's not really the idea of passion that we have, or at least it's not the concept that I have. I want to have someone who's really engaged with the work they do. So when you look at what you do here, it's very important that you say, what have we done in the first place? Simply saying people have no passion because they work from home or work from anywhere, that is straightforward wrong. And then you have to reconsider your choices of leadership and the leaders you chose and how you or how you have not qualified them. The last bit, there is no creativity. That is the third claim. And here kicks something in which you probably have read before. There is a growing amount of scientific evidence to that when you work remotely, you are less creative. However, that sticks to the situation that you work remotely from home on your own. And there is strong evidence. And we didn't even need the scientific evidence. I give you an example of one of my clients. One of my clients, a fashion company, the designers were the first who said, we need to get back in the office because I want to work creatively with my peers. And by the way, saying that when people work on their own, they are not creative is also a quite brash statement, because when people work on their own, but they work in a work from anywhere concept so they can travel the world, traveling the world fosters creativity. There's a scientific evidence to that. However, when we just take into account, let's say you have people who work from home and they do not travel the world, saying that people are less creative when they just work on their own from home, that is actually correct. So you can't say that Hieronymus is wrong here. Creative processes are less enforced and less thriving when people are just sitting at home doing something which they more or less like. So you have to see that creativity is the bit where he might be right with the statement he made. So looking back at what we just did, we had three statements. Statement number one was there was no attachment. And we can't really say that he was wrong or right because he was somewhere in the middle. It's wrong to say that there is no attachment at all with remote work. However, it's right to say that there is no attachment if either you have bad concepts or no concept at all for remote work, still getting back to C-level where you say you are exactly in the position to be able to provide these concepts, or at least should give guidance on these concepts. So on the bit of no attachment, he's partly right, partly wrong. On the part of no passion, he's just straightforward wrong. Saying that that someone has no passion based on if they show up or not show up in an office is absurd. There's no scientific evidence to that. When people show no passion, you have an internal organizational problem, most likely based on the leadership style that you have. So be sure to look at your own organization, to look at your own status, to look at your own structure, your leaders, how you qualify or not qualify them, because what you see at the moment is that more and more leaders get into leadership without receiving any kind of formal qualification for that or any kind of training. And then you wonder why they don't do it too well. It's very important that you qualify your leaders. When people show no passion, most likely your leaders haven't done too well. And the third bit, no creativity, we have to say Hieronymus is right here. When remote work happens, people work on their own, and that's the standard we now have to assume here. People don't do too well when they just work from home at home. And that's an important bit which you have to take care of if you need creative processes, for example, in design or production, or you need some sort of creative product management, whatever you're looking for. As soon as people work from home on their own, creativity goes down. And there's strong scientific evidence to that. And here we now have the approach, how do you deal with that's the topic of today. How do you deal with C-level making fact-free statements, or let's say statements which are more of an opinion than the actual scientific standard? Because let's face it, Professor Cecil Neely, Harvard University, wrote the book Remote Work Revolution, that there is strong scientific evidence to remote work just being a part of the future of work, if you like it or not. And when you read the book Remote Work Revolution, which I highly recommend you to do, and you see there is strong scientific evidence to remote work works when it's done well. You just can't send people home and say good luck from here. So how do you deal with C-level making these kind of brash statements? Step number one, you always have to take their statement and put it into the different parts. Show the different parts. Here, when, for example, Hieronymus said, no attachment, no passion, no creativity, you can't just say he's right or he's wrong, because that would not hit the nail on the head. We had 3 bits that were said, no attachment, no passion, no creativity. And then we can evaluate these 3 bits. No attachment, we said he's partly right, partly wrong, depending if they have concept or not. However, they can deliver the concepts on C-level, or they should give guidance for people doing so. So we have to see it's a right, wrong thing with the attachment. Second is no passion. When there's no passion, and this is connected to remote work, here he's just completely wrong. That there's no scientific evidence to remote work leads to no passion. Absolutely nothing. And the third, no creativity, is actually right here. When you see people working from home on their own and you say that's the concept we have, if you have any concept in place, then of course people will be less creative. There's strong scientific evidence to that. So when you deal with C-level, which is not easy, and you have to deal with these situations, step number 1 is take the statement and put it into different parts. Make different chunks of what they said. Step number 2, factually say what they said, evaluate it, and then of course you can make derivation of that. And then step number 3 is you have to show what is the scientific evidence, if they are right and if they're wrong. And when you now say, well, I don't have the scientific evidence, well, then it's your job to find it, because you can't just say, oh, that CEO has their opinion, I have something for you, here's my opinion. Normally, this goes a bit back and forth, and at the end, someone who's higher in the hierarchy will win the whole thing, and that normally means C-level and not you. Except when you're C-level and listen to this, then you're probably used to winning these kind of arguments. And again, an argument should never be about winning, but about finding consensus to work together in the future. So step number 1, take the statement, put it in different chunks. Step number 2, state what was factually said and show the derivations you make from the statements. And step number 3, look at the scientific evidence and state what is the scientific evidence right now. The consequences, of course, of these statements should also be mentioned when you are a larger company, which is probably part of public discussion, because we can now say whatever happened here, and no matter if you like or do not like what Mr. Hieronymus said, the employer branding of L'Oreal took a hit. L'Oreal's employer branding is going down with such a statement. So you can assume that meanwhile already the internal communications department, the PR department, and of course the HR department are working on limiting the damage that has been done to the organization by such a brash statement. So it's very important to stick to this principle, because you all look for talent, and no matter if you like remote work or not, it's not about liking something. You can say, I don't like gravity, and it's still there. Some aspects are part of working life, and you have to offer them. And when you don't offer them, you just have to offer something else to still get access to talent. When the package you offer isn't good enough, you shouldn't be surprised that people move on somewhere else. It's never the people's fault. It's your fault if you do not get the best talent you want on the market to work for you with the package you offer. And with the system we have in place today, you are now able to discuss on C-level, when they make such a statement, how to deal with that in the future and how to find a solution that works for everyone. And I wish you all the best doing so. Of course, you might now say, well, I have a couple of questions about that, and I can understand that you do. In the show notes of this podcast, you find my email address, nb@nb-networks.com. Feel free to send me an email. And of course, you find my LinkedIn as well. You can connect with me on there. You don't have to do the follow thing, just connect properly. And if you have something very specific where you say, I like to get training, speaking, or coaching, just let me know, because then we can talk about that. And of course, I'm happy to deliver whatever you wanted to do. However, you can also just send me an email or a LinkedIn message, and we just chat about whatever you want to chat about. Doesn't cost you a penny, and then we take it from there. The second step, which I always recommend, is that you sign up for our leadership letter, because we have live sessions and they are free of charge for anyone listening to this podcast or signing up for the leadership letter. The leadership letter is just one email every Wednesday morning. And when you are on that list, you receive an email very early every Wednesday morning. It's 100% content at free guarantee. And in this leadership letter, it's mentioned how to access the live sessions and where to find them and when they actually take place. We at least have one session per month available in the English and German language. Looking forward to seeing you there. And the third aspect, which I recommend you to do, is apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you've heard, you will see the positive outcomes that you actually want to see in your organization. And I wish you all the best doing so. And at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. For the rest of the week, I wish you an amazing time, hopefully including remote work. And of course, as you know, the final phrase is always the same. Thank you very much for your time.